I'm Annabelle Rose Bullock. I'm a senior at BCC and I'm the creator of Indigenous Women of DMD.
What would you consider / identify yourself?
Well, personally I'm mixed, but for the Indigenous community it's best to call someone either Indigenous, Native, First Nations, or of course where their tribal name is preferable.
What tribe are you from?
I'm from Pueblo tribe, Navajo tribe, and Cherokee tribe.
How has being Indigenous impacted your experience at BCC?
I think a lot of people that have mixed ethnicities and races can agree. It's you're constantly trying to fit yourself into one category, but you're different than everyone in each category that you're part of, so it's a little lonely.
What has been your experience with the American education system regarding Indigenous history?
They don't even care about the entire Native American / Indigenous / Native community at all, period. What do we get? We get one day out of a U.S. history class. I wish they would teach that boho fashion is Indigenous in origin. I wish they would teach you America's not always a good guy. I wish they would teach basic cultures of the tribes that used to live in Maryland.
What do you wish no one would say to you ever again, and what is something you wish people would say to you more often?
When I tell them I'm Indigenous, which is hard for me to do at this point because of the way people react to it, I wish people would stop mocking me with certain noises and asking me if I live in a teepee or a wigwam, or I wish people would stop stereotyping basically, and also I wish people would stop using a racial slur, savage, because it is a slur. Believe it or not, you guys are just saying it all the time and it's disgusting. I also wish people stop using the BLM and the BIPOC movement just for a trendy Instagram hashtag. I want people to actually get behind the movement.
What is it like seeing people celebrate Thanksgiving?
As a little kid, I didn't celebrate it because my mother thought it was just a disgusting holiday to celebrate. I mean, to me, it's people are just dancing around to the fact that they've basically erased an entire human race off of the face of this earth in less than 300 years.
And what do you wish non-Indigenous people would know or do maybe this Thanksgiving?
I really hope that they research Squanto and the Pestucket tribe and the Mache tribe as well, because Squanto was not just a helper. At 14 he was enslaved and he was brought to Spain and they couldn't sell him. He was sent to England, and then for 4 years he worked in England, and then finally his owner sent him back to the US, where he found his entire tribe was exterminated basically by an epidemic called the Great Dying, and he was enslaved again by his own people because he knew English to be a translator between the colonizers and the Wampanoag peoples, which are a collective group of tribes, which he used to be a part of, but his tribe went extinct, so he was just a captive translator. He was a tortured soul who ended up dying really, really young. People should also know about Thanksgiving, as most Indigenous communities call it the Day of Mourning. It is where we pray to our ancestors and give thanks to them, and mourn them on an altar, usually by putting offerings there.
What are blood quantum laws and how have they impacted you personally?
So blood quantum laws are basically a prehistoric law made by the 13 colonies in 1705 that prevent Indigenous peoples from, marrying outside of the Indigenous race. It was a race purification law that's still active today. If all of your grandparents were basically 2 different Indigenous tribes in each one of them, and you were fully Indigenous just from 8 different tribes, you'd only be able to count 1. I'd have to say I have an 1/8 of a blood quantum, but my DNA test would be 3/8 Native, but the United States government would be okay, once you reach a 16th, which would be my child, you're not allowed to say you're at all Indigenous. It's illegal, because you're not allowed to exist, basically, It's the erasure culture of the entire thing. They want us to not exist anymore. And people don't understand how disgusting the government is. You know, they don't give us any money. They don't give us proper housing on reservations. They don't give us proper water. You know, sometimes you can light the water on fire, and sometimes there's no heater or air conditioning, or there's mold, or there's, you know, holes in the ceiling. They don't really care. And Mount Rushmore was even built on native land, but they're saying native peoples don't have rights to tear it down, even though it's not their land to build it on. It's disturbing, really. It's an extermination tactic that's done. And since they can't do it fast enough, that's where MMIW comes in, which is where they're killing women so that there are going to be more kids out there with a half quantum. So once, you know, they get down to a 16th, you know, they don't exist anymore. And that'll only be like a couple generations behind that. So if you can imagine how horrific this is, and we're all just like living here like nothing's happening. You know, people are not joining tribes and getting tribal ID cards because of the fear of, you know, being exterminated. You know, a lot of mostly mothers are taken and young girls. So we know that this is what's happening. Yeah, disturbing.
Why did you create the Instagram account, Indigenous Women?
I wanted somebody else to create the account that wasn't white passing, so they could be the vessel, but there was no one that wasn't white passing or that was Indigenous that I even knew at BCC. Or I created it because I needed to be out there. People needed to advocate for it.
How can non-Indigenous people help with the cause of Indigenous rights and giving Indigenous land?
There are several creators that have made really big petitions to get land back, like Leah, she's on TikTok. If you even just look up on Greenpeace, actually, if you sign some of their petitions, that should help with land back and help with MMIW. But the biggest thing you could possibly do is just get the word out. Show them the ugliness of America. There are 300,000 plus missing and murdered Indigenous women right now in the US and Canada, and nobody is helping them. There are 116 cases that have been opened by the government's total. Murder is the third most common cause of an Indigenous woman's death. Indigenous women are 40% of women being incarcerated in the entire country. Well, we are the smallest and poorest minority in the country, only having 6 million people. I want people to know that we've gone through 2 genocides and we're still standing, and we will not be silenced.
What do you think about cultural appropriation?
Most Indigenous people will tell you that the only thing that truly offends us with people wearing things that we wear is if people wear regalia, if they're not at all Indigenous. Nobody cares about the blood quantum. Your quantum could be 1/64th. You're entitled to wear regalia, but only if you make it or if it's from an Indigenous maker and it's made authentically. You may wear beaded earrings, you may wear braids, you may wear, you may have tapestries, and you may have boho clothes, but if these things are Indigenous in origin, I would strongly suggest going to Etsy or any other site to have an authentic Indigenous person make this, because all the fake dream catchers that are going around are offensive, and all of the fake beads that are made in China that, or Cherokee, don't wear those. Those are fake. Give money to people that authentically make these from their culture, and it is okay to wear them, but it's not okay to mock Indigenous culture by wearing fake regalia or wearing regalia that you're not allowed to wear because you're not Indigenous.
Because I'm Latina, so I'm Indigenous too, half of my blood is Indigenous, but I don't know anything about my culture and stuff like that. What do you think about that, I guess, the erasure of the history?
I think that it's sad, honestly. Everyone's culture is least bit lost. I'm almost half Indigenous, and I know the bare minimum of what, we can know about our culture because of how much has been erased and how many people have died. And I think that the best thing for people that have lost their culture to do is to reach out you know, to tribes or to creators or, you know, anywhere really, to try to learn about your culture and reconnect. You know, you can mend the bond. You know, you may not have been born with the culture, but if you learn it and you start practicing it and you pass it on to your children, they can't erase it.